call on her. But anyway, so let me tell you about what I know about Paper Girl. So when you were reading it, did you at all think, hey, this is a little bit like Stranger Things? Interestingly enough, Paper Girls actually did come out before Stranger Things. It came out in early October of 2015, and it concluded in July of 2019. So over the course of that time, of course, there were some, Stranger Things and Paper Girls were going on at the same time. I don't know if there was any, kind of crossover where maybe they influenced each other, but I definitely got a sense of vibe from it. It was a way that I used to, describe to people if they were wondering what it was like. So it's a little bit like Stranger Things, it might help someone to read it. But Brian K. Vaughan is an American comic book and TV writer. He's best known for Y: The Last Man, Ex Machina, Runaways, Prince of Baghdad, Saga, which we read together at Books and Bars, and Paper Girls. He's a writer, story editor, and producer of the TV series Lost during seasons 3 through 5. So that's some prime Lost time. He was born in '76 in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where approximately our story is set. Went to New York University Tisch School of the Arts. And Cliff Chiang, just the beautiful art here that I just loved, is a former assistant editor at DC. He's now an illustrator known for his work on Human Target, Beware the Creeper, Crisis Aftermath, The Spectre, Green Arrow, Black Canary, Wonder Woman. He did a great run on Wonder Woman. And of course, Paper Girls. He was born in '74, Manhattan, and he went to Harvard. So that's Cliff Chiang for you. So anyone want to tell us, kick it off, what they thought of Paper Girls? Feel free. Maybe you just finished it. Maybe you just saw that you could read it from Scribd and you used my link and you're all excited to tell us what you thought of it. Feel free to raise your virtual hand and chime in. I see Donna. Donna, may I unmute you? Talk to us.
Sure. I guess I really would like to start out with a question.
Please.
I enjoyed reading these a lot, but because I do so little reading in the graphic novel genre, I'm really curious how this fits in. I agree that it's got overtones of Stranger Things. I loved all that riding around on the bicycles, the kind of, 80s technology with the walkie-talkies and the them being really kind of blown away by what might be coming in the future technologically. But I liked the graphic depiction of what things looked like. I mean, that in words, it would be really hard to describe some of those scenes, but when you see them drawn like that, and then even moving closer, or different angles or moment to moment, how the pictures can change. I think I appreciate how there are things you can do with drawing that you can't really do in the same way or maybe as vividly with words by an author. But I just have no idea how this is similar or different. I like that these were girls and all that. Is that unique to this series, that there are these girl heroes, or are there others like this? So I'm looking for insights.
Okay, so I will say a little bit about what I think, and then I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts on how it fits into the larger picture. And I'm not sure exactly. I want to get at what you're looking for in your question, so feel free to restate if I don't get to it. So this is published by Image Comics, and Image is not Marvel. It's not DC. Marvel Comics and DC Comics are like the big two. And then there were a bunch of really talented creators that were sick of basically coming up with really cool stuff, but then it was owned by Marvel and it was owned by DC, and that's still the way it works. So the people that were doing really great stuff in the 90s formed their own company called Image. And so Image was kind of like the big indie upstart, and it had like the best writers, the best artists that if you were good enough to make a name for yourself at Marvel or DC, you went off and you worked at Image, because at Image, they own their creations. So when Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chiang have Paper Girls turned into an Amazon series, they get a bigger cut of that. Like it's, and they have a bigger say in how it's handled. And what you see with Image is it's a lot of creator owned characters and comics, in the sense that they also have this control, and you will see like the same writer and the same artist do an entire story like this over 30 issues over the 4 or 5 years that this ran, as opposed to with something like Batman at DC or the X-Men at Marvel. Many different writers, many different artists have done their take on them over the many different years, and there will be like certain people's favorite stories and stuff like that. And we're seeing a lot of the best versions of those made now into the DCU and the MCU films. But there's a difference there in the sense of there are certainly many now books with female protagonists and or girls in charge sort of thing. But it certainly wasn't the case for many, many years. And it is something that is you'll see more of in indie comics still. The big two are trying to do better. And I mentioned Cliff Chiang. He had an excellent run on Wonder Woman, and that's very obviously one of the most well-known, famous female characters. But yeah, so that's a little bit of how it is and how it's different. I mean, it's a lot of Image stories are. I would say that the difference is that so there's no superheroes in this, right? This is a story of like time travel and just like regular people, but going through like a crazy set of events. It's more Back to the Future than it is like X-Men or something like that. There's no people with like the mutant powers in this, but there's people that are really scientifically smart, and then when they end up going through time and using that to their advantage. Does that help answer it a bit, Donna? If anyone else wants to chime in and say how they feel it fits into this, and Donna, please clarify for us what you're looking for here. Was that good, Donna, what I said? Okay. Anyone else have a hand? Anyone else want to say, give us their take on Paper Girls, or how Paper Girls is different than the average comics you read, or the same, how it fits into things? Any thoughts on that? I see Katie Brecken with her new last name and her hand up. May I unmute you, Katie? Talk to us.
Yeah, so I found this book very entertaining. It was a super quick read, which I absolutely love. It was a little hard to follow in the grandfather character. Like, I didn't necessarily understand his role entirely. I did like the element of meeting their either older, like different versions of themselves later on in life. I really like that a lot. And I really love the ending where what was her name? Maury like showed up and kept them from getting hit by a car. That was really sweet. And then her like smirk at the end was just kind of the icing on the cake. Just a little sidebar, I would like to say that Evelyn has kind of got the evil villain comic book lighting going on with her like element there, and I'm like, ooh, she looks all cynical and like semi-evil. I'm like, she could be a bad guy in our story.
There you are. How do you, Evelyn, would you like to respond to that? You've just been called out as a possible villain in our Hollywood Squares like story here, our Image, and now I've spotlighted you for everyone. Do you want to respond to Brecken, the Brecken?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, now your video seems to be a bit frozen. I'll remove the spotlight. Maybe that'll help. Okay. I can hear you.
Cool. Yeah, I really liked it. I loved the nuances and the character development of the four main women. I loved how we were rewarded with like continuing to read each episode, I guess, or each whatever it's called, issue, with like new backstory. Yeah, I really liked it. I liked to go back to Donna's point with like how a picture is worth a lot, like just like the facial expressions of the characters. You could just see like everything that's going through their heads, just the close-ups. Like if I was like reading too fast and I didn't understand a reaction, if you like go back and like look at their eyes, you could see what was happening. Yeah, and yeah, overall, I've enjoyed it. I guess I was confused and I wasn't really bought in until like maybe the fourth issue where they finally told us the difference between like the old timers and the newer kids, like from like 2700 or whatever, who were trying to like basically change the past to make everything better in the past, I guess. And that was what the overarching conflict was. I thought that was like super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it starts off. It started off a little frenetic. I mean, there's a lot of like, hurry up, we got to go from here to here to here, and I think it could. It is one of those ones where I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like if you can stick with it, you settle into it a little bit, and you get to know the characters. Where at first it's kind of like you're just thrown into it, and they're just going, from this to this to this, and they're kind of introducing everything, and you kind of have to, stick with it to find out, like for the payoff on that. Yeah,
Totally.
it's kind of funny. The illustrations they really, I mean, at times they're almost like a newspaper comic strip, which I think is kind of a funny intentional thing, them being paper girls and how much that's referenced with hiding those messages. I love that idea of, how do they get messages to other travelers, and yet follow this really bad kind of comic strip, that Frankie Tomato or whatever, and then look back and find it. And there were times where their expressions were almost like Charles Schultz, like Peanuts, like just like the wide-eyed and
yes,
you can kind of see through the hair, and they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. And I love times where I would slip into little things like that. It just had a fun, and the vibe that the colors gave. I mean, the colorists in a comic, I think this is another difference I would say with Paper Girls over maybe some Marvel and DC stuff, is I think the colorist is up there in importance with the artist, as far as the mood that it creates and the vibe, and how, there's times where, panels are really you can just get like a different feeling from them on how it's colored, and the colors are separated. I really thought that was really a nice addition to it. I see some hands now. Andrew's got his hand up. Andrew, may I unmute you? Talk to us.
Yes, I really enjoyed the book. In contrast to Katie, I took a different approach. I read this very slowly. I mean, obviously, it could have been read very quickly, but I didn't read more than 2 episodes in a day, and never read 2 episodes in complete, back to back. Maybe I would read one in the morning and one in the evening. And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit more than I expected with that kind of a pacing. The reason I did that was because, I just did a little research, and it had come out over, 30 weeks or whatever. And theoretically, people bought these, and waited for them to come out. And so it was kind of, to me, it was kind of the way that it had been intended to be read. And I think that changed it for me. And I really enjoyed quite a bit the pacing of it, and the serial episode part of it. I did think a little bit about Stranger Things, but I actually thought a little bit about Stand By Me, which is another 4-kid adventure, all of that kind of thing, a particular point in time where, their coming of age is flipping from being these young adolescents to being teenagers or adults. And I really enjoyed that aspect. I felt like this was kind of a girl version of Stand By Me, from the standpoint that you had these very different people from different backgrounds with different backstories, kind of coming together in this one, seminal moment. So it was quite good. This is not something anyone needs to answer immediately, but there was one scene I just don't get. And if anybody has a good explanation for it, I would love to hear it by the end of the conversation. So there was some kind of dream sequence later on, maybe in the second, third, like, the later half of the episode where there was a scene at KJ's bar mitzvah, and she's dressed up in this really nice dress, and you know, she's like, you know, don't mess with me about this dress, it's just for this bar mitzvah. And then one of the characters comes in with a gun, and you know, and there's just this really strange kind of interaction. And then one of the characters wakes up, and I always thought maybe that might be resolved like later on, and I never really got around to figuring out what had happened there. Like, was this a dream about a future that they were potentially going to have together with the changes that were coming, this sort of thing? It took up like a half of the episode, maybe at least a third, and it seemed significant, and then I just lost it. And I'm wondering if I lost it because I just didn't get it, or if you know, maybe it wasn't particularly well tied together at the end. Last thing I'll say, loved the Cleveland aspect of it. It felt like the perfect kind of geographic location for this story and these characters to unfold. You know, you know, I appreciated that the kind of challenges that these girls were running into, who they were as people. Cleveland seemed like the perfect place for this story to unfold. I'm glad it wasn't New York City. I'm glad it wasn't LA or something like that. I found that really charming and quaint. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm happy to hear everyone else's thoughts on it.
Andrew, thank you. I was looking through my copy. I want to review the dream bat mitzvah and the part with the gun, because in my recollection of almost all of the dreams have a slightly religious aspect to them. There's a lot of Apple, there's a lot of Eve ideas, and you know, it kind of ties into the whole Apple technology and the company and stuff later, and then the whole idea of the tree of knowledge. And then later they're saying, you know, I think Eve was right in doing that, and you know, so I am wondering if there's something that more ties into that with the bat mitzvah aspect of it. I want to find it and look at it, but I'm really interested to hear anyone else's thoughts on that dream and how it might connect. And was there a dropped thread there, or does it come back? Is there something that we're missing? Oh, Pete, I'm glad you made it in finally. I know you were up for it. Welcome. I see Maura's had her hand up. Maura, may I unmute you? Please talk to us.
Well, to speak to Andrew's point, how I interpreted it was one of the things that stood out to me is that when they shot the gun, the rays that came out were rainbows. And so it was like, we can't forget this connection that we forged, and especially with KJ and her kind of coming out of like the importance of that connection that was built with Mac. That's how I interpreted that. I did kind of blow through this on my lunch break the past 2 days. So I didn't really like savor it. I enjoyed it. And before I get into my thoughts, to add to Donna's initial question, I'm like a huge comic book nerd. And I will just second everything that Jeff said. I will say Marvel had kind of this golden age of diversity around 2016 to like 2018, where like they were bringing on a lot of women writers. Kelly Sue DeConnick is amazing, and she did Captain Marvel remake with Captain Marvel as a woman. G. Willow Wilson did Miss Marvel as Kamala Khan, who's a first-generation Muslim immigrant. They rewrote Spider-Man as, I never read these ones, so I can't speak too much to it. I think Peter Morales, something Morales, is a biracial kid. So Marvel was doing great with diverse. Miles Morales, thank you. And then it just wasn't selling with their standard base, so they kind of, Black Panther I think rose during this time too, and that one stuck around. But I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Saga. I felt like it still has this Brian K. Vaughan, and I appreciate, like, I don't think he's necessarily problematic, but it definitely feels like a man writing women. It felt almost at times like, oh, you're a high school boy that has a crush on this girl and you're writing a comic about her. But I thought overall it was really fun. And just like this great, like, I don't know, past the Bechdel test, like 2000.
Yes.
And the colors too, they do reference Stranger Things, I think, in one of the last couple of volumes. In a Halloween costume, someone is dressed as 11 from the first season. So
Yes.
yeah, but I just
Yes.
thought it was kind of just like I don't know, something nice to do on my lunch break and pleasant. I do, if anybody knows, was like kind of the trajectory of the story, because it did feel like there were lots of loose ends, like they were planting seeds for potential stories, and then it's like, okay, we gotta wrap it up now. And I was like, I could have done with probably 3 more years of Paper Girls.
Great points, Maura. And yes, I too. So, and I want to circle back also to something that Andrew said, talking about how he savored it and how he parceled it out over time. I was reading Paper Girls as a monthly, and you say 30 weeks. No, we're talking more than 30 months. And there were breaks between times because sometimes they can't get an issue out every single month. It used to be that like you would expect a comic would be a monthly comic. So there would be, it would come out once a month. That was especially the thing that Marvel and DC did. They still try to do that for most issues. Sometimes things have like Marvel and DC have found ways that come out, more than once, or they just have like, instead of, you don't get enough Spider-Man or X-Men because they're so popular. So there's 5 to 10 different titles that you have to follow, and there's crossovers and everything. And it just, you end up spending a lot of money. My friends and I have oftentimes you guys talk about other book clubs, and I take it personally, and I don't let it hurt me too much, because I know that you'll always come back to Books and Bars. But I have a secret other club. It's a comic book club, and we call ourselves Wait for the Trade, because we got to a point where we actually prefer to read it in trade format. We wait for the trade, because buying everything monthly, and sometimes you just don't know if it's going to be worth it or where it's going to go. And so I love the trade paperback. You can put it on a shelf. It's beautiful. It comes in a nice format like this. And so reading it monthly is really exciting, but you know what I find? You forget things, and you oftentimes have to reread, because if there's breaks also between it, you just, there's a cliffhanger, and then you're like, you start the new issue and you're like, I don't remember, because I've read so much in that month since then. So the trade paperback is a great way to do it. It is also great if you want to have monthly discussions, but usually there's more to talk about if you wait for the trade. As far as I wonder too if it was cut off, because Saga took a big break and it's back. Saga is running again, and it's still good, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It comes out again in January, but it started up again this year after a few years break. 30 issues is not a ton. They did tell a whole story here, but it does feel to me like it was a little bit rushed by the end, and that they could have, definitely told more here. I'm not sure exactly what happened and why, but yeah, if anyone else knows anything about that. I mean, for example, Saga is in like the 60s now, like high 60s, I think, for the number that they're on. And this ran 30 issues. Granted, there are some time breaks and stuff like that. But we got a bunch of hands up now, so I want to give Sarah a chance. Sarah, may I unmute you? Please talk to us, Sarah.
Okay, hello. So I have a lot of thoughts. Mostly the one I'm going to focus on for the moment that I have the mic is based off of what Andrew and Evelyn had said earlier, because it kind of brought this up in my mind about reading. So just like Maura, I plowed through this series because I can't help myself. I don't have the restraint, God knows, to sit there and read 2 episodes a day. Andrew, God bless you. That's incredible. I can't do that. So I plowed through. And what came up in my mind when I was reading, especially when it comes to graphic novels, is something I learned when I've read a little bit of manga in my life, very small amounts, specifically Junji Ito, who writes horror anime. And something that's incredible about his horror is the terror to just turn the page over to see what horrible thing is waiting on the other side. But you can't help yourself. You're like, oh God, I have to see whatever these people are going through. And so with Paper Girls, obviously not to the same extent because it's not horror, but I love what I love about graphic novels, comic books to manga is the capacity to visualize, to see, turn the page, see these incredible things happen in a way that is not always necessarily there when I'm reading literature. And so I loved the moments in Paper Girls where I realized the story was much greater than what I had seen at the beginning. And so finding the time machine, seeing these people you don't know, these monsters, all of a sudden being in this era, and it's not just, you know, housed to the 80s or the mid 2000s, but way in the future, way in the past. So I really loved that, and that's what kept me reading. But I do think there is something to say to the waiting and reading it slowly, as the original publishing, you know, attitude is reading it slowly like that. There's something I think that you get from reading that you don't necessarily get when you binge. So yeah, so those are some of my thoughts. I just love the capacity to turn the page and see something and be surprised or frightened and have to turn back and look at their faces again or see what they're talking about again and then do it again and experience it. I find that fascinating when it comes to graphic novels or comic books or any kind of like visual reading medium. So it's cool to get the opportunity to do that again. And Paper Girls I'd never heard of before, so I was glad to get to read it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And I would love to hear from anyone else also who's maybe read a few other comics or graphic novels, and maybe at least the ones with us, and how Paper Girls stacks up against those. And to bring it back to the Dream, it's around issue probably 29 or 30. It's towards the end of trade number 6. The Bat Mitzvah Dream. Now, this is my take on it. I'd love to hear anyone else's. It's actually Mac's dream, even though you think it's KJ's dream, but it's Mac's dream. And I think the point of it is twofold. Mac, you love me. I do. And then it's Mac realizing that she is, you know, gay, and she does love KJ. And so it's her dream. But you think it's KJ's dream because of where the setting is. And then the gun aspect of it is, it's a Terminator reference. It's one of the all-time great time travel stories that's referenced quite a bit, is Terminator 2, especially T2. So I think that's the main point of that with the gun. I don't feel like it's really too much anything else there, except for the fact that it's one of the other girls that's the Terminator in that, and they reference Terminator and the time travel aspects of that in there. That's my take on it, and I'd love to hear anyone else's. But Pete's finally in, and he's finally got his hand up. So Pete, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us, buddy. Are you, Pete?
No, I am.
Hi, Pete.
Yeah, I almost want Kara to go first, but
well, we can do that. We can do that.
No, I'll savor it. We'll savor it.
Okay.
And then to answer Andrew's question is I think you nailed it. And then also in T2, Sarah Connor had her thing where she was droning on that no fate. There is no fate. We're not prisoners of time. And I think that kind of wrapped it up. It was in Mac's mind, like originally I thought it was Aaron's like praying all the time to try to remember that they're not just paper girls, they're friends. And then I think that was Mac's version of she's not letting go with what she learned in the time. And I thought that part was just fabulous. And I don't know if you've talked about this already, but that the 4 of them gave up so much to like save the universe in personally, because they were all very fond of each other. And I thought that was just so cool. And then the other thing too, and I think it was in I don't know how many of you are in the Slack chat, but I did want to hear about what what women thought about men writing women, especially girls in this case, and how close were they or not. And I'll just wait to hear those. But yeah, the Bechdel test, they never all they ever talked about is how effed up their experience was. And at the beginning, I was just like, sort of to quote Andrew, it's like, what's even happening here? You know, they were just like, you know, being chased by these people and then run into a time machine, and, you know, are they in the upside down and whatever? But they really stuck together, which was really pretty cool. And I think that's what carried me at the beginning, because they leave no one behind. KJ was missing. Well, hell no, we're gonna go get her. And then that bits of time travel with the hockey stick, and like, oh no, we're gonna go get our girl here. And then the emphasis too is like where when KJ has her period, I think what that did to me was like it re-emphasized that, like, oh my God, these are just girls. I mean, they're so young, because it's not quite clear in the comic, you know, but they're just
Yes.
you know, like, you know, they happen to be 7th grade, but still they're just like all this weight on these kids, you know. It's sort of like, and it's sort of like, I wonder how many when I think of what all people like in Ukraine are going through, it's just like, you know, you subject children to these kinds of traumas. And then I also wondered if that was not a benefit of the brain wipe when they got back. And then that's where the ending was just perfect, where they were like, hey, we still have an hour, want to hang out? And that's like the real victory. They just they have their lives restored. Now there's so many holes here, because that future woman came in and helped them out with that avoid a traffic accident or something. And so I feel like the Time Lords are hanging out there ready to make sequels. And and so I'm about halfway through the Prime show, but that's a wildly different story. I mean, it's the same story, but they're using different plot vehicles just because it's TV, and they have to reveal early that it's a time travel problem. And it's not like in this graphic thing, like we didn't even know like what they're doing. So, but
yeah,
I really loved it, especially because of the finish. But
thanks, Pete. I'm glad you loved it so much. And yeah, there's definitely something to talk about here with some 40-something guys writing 12-year-old girls. I don't know. I mean, did it work or not? I can't say, but I would love to hear from anyone who was once a 12-year-old girl.
and I have one quick question before answer that is, when's Donna's birthday?
That's what a lot of people are asking in the chat. When is Donna's birthday? Donna, only you can tell us.
What month?
December.
Well, oh, it's coming up?
Oh,
Yeah.
because
18. Why do you, whoops, I just slapped my laptop. So why do you ask?
oh, because there's a book we should do on your birthday month, because the heroes of it are librarians.
I love it.
Yeah, the Celeste Ng book, Celeste Wynn.
Oh, is it her new one?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I haven't read that yet. Oh, cool.
It's a treat.
Huh.
So.
Okay, so I put that book. So we've read Celeste before, and I think she's always worth discussing. And that book sounds good. It's in our list. If you look at our bookshop, I have it as a potential pick for 2023. So who knows? Maybe December 2023. It'll be Donna's birthday, and the librarians will be the heroes. And it'd be a perfect way to celebrate Donna and her birthday. But yeah, so check it out. I'm interested in giving that one a look. So thanks. Yeah, you guys recommended that one to me, and I always like her stuff. So you know, I don't want to always do the same author every book, but there's a few now that we're always trying to find someone that we can read as much as Neil Gaiman. So maybe it'll be Celeste. Who knows? But speaking of someone who's always like Neil Gaiman, Kara's had her hand up for a while, so I'm going to ask if I can unmute her and lower her hand. Talk to us, Miss Berger.
Not sure how I feel being compared to Neil Gaiman, but he's prolific, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Just like you're prolific at books and bars.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I feel like I should have taken notes to remember. One thing, like I feel like I had two very different experiences reading this. So I read this, I think close to when it started coming out. Like I was reading like it monthly. And then I kind of fell off of it. So I never actually finished it. That's my problem with like monthly things. I definitely like prefer to wait until like an actual like full book comes out at this point.
Yep.
But at the time I was like collecting comics and I would go to the comic shop every month. And this was one of the ones I read.
What was your shop?
And-
Give them a plug. Give your shop a plug. They need a plug.
Source in Roseville.
That's the one store that doesn't need a plug. They got everyone going
Yeah.
there. I mean, the
It
source
was
is
just-
great. They got everything.
It's always been the closest to me,
Yeah.
like location wise. So, it's
so
a big one.
my former shop left my neighborhood and moved to the Source's neighborhood, and I'm concerned that they're not gonna. I mean, it's Comic Book College, and they
Oh,
left.
okay.
They left lovely Kingfield, and now they're up in Roseville by the Source. So
Well,
check 'em
I'll
out
have to
next
check it
time you're up
out.
there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
if they're in Roseville, that's like convenient for
Yeah.
me. But so one thing, like I felt like reading it monthly, like I felt like these girls had like such like a strong foundation of friendship. And it's because like you don't quite remember like how short the timeline is with how fast things happen. Like before their memories are erased after like all of that stuff happens, they've probably known Aaron for like 48 hours or something. Like how long does this actually take place?
that's a great
And
question.
so when I read it like all together, I was like, I still really liked it. Like they're children. You bond with other children super fast. So I don't think it's like unrealistic. But there was such a like loyalty with there, and like they were like, we've got to find her, we've got to find KJ. And I was like, you just met. Like KJ and Mac like kind of know each other better. Like, but it was just a thing that was interesting. Like I didn't question it at all when I was reading it like monthly or when I had big
Yes.
pauses. Like I was just like, yes, this is like epic friendship. These are like, I don't know, any iconic group of friends, but they really just barely know each other. It doesn't ruin it. Again, I kind of, it's fiction. Like it's one of those things I can just accept. Like, okay, they like trauma bonded, like these children are like really close to each other, but it was a different experience. Let's see, another thought I had, we hadn't really talked about queer representation yet. I do like that it's like sprinkled in there. And I'm not saying I want it to be more homophobic because it's the 80s, but one issue I had is that with KJ being queer, like when it comes out, like everyone is cool about it except for Mac. And Mac says like some really stupid shit. I mean, it's relatively tame for like the comic book, but it's like the most hateful stuff in the book comes from her, who's like the only other like named queer person besides those two like future alien dudes who we find out they were gay after one of them is dead. And that's just a trope, right? The homophobe who's like secretly gay. And I'm like, I don't know, it happens, sure. But like, I'd rather, if that trope is gonna happen, I'd prefer it to come from a queer person. Like you can't do like a stereotype if it's about your own life or whatever, but I just didn't like it. It didn't sit right with me. Like, I just feel like if there was like other homophobia going on, maybe it wouldn't have been as noticeable, but because she's like literally like the only homophobic character and then she's the love interest to like KJ, I didn't care for it. So that was an element I didn't love. Otherwise, when it comes to like, these guys writing female characters, I think like in Why the Last Man, he does a worse job at writing female characters. I would say like he's grown and he definitely did better in Paper Girls. I think I like Saga the best, but Saga is like not like full of that many female characters, I guess, compared to all of the male characters in it. Yeah, so I don't know. I think he does okay, but it's still like noticeable. Like there would be no part of me, like if they took the author name off of this, no part of me would have been like, oh yeah, like a woman wrote this. Like it definitely gave off like dude vibes. And like his idea of what like, these girls would be like. But in general, I thought he did okay. And I did really like the book. And then the other thing that it made me think of, so like they tried to like, I thought their idea of the future was really interesting. Obviously, they were trying to make it like quite different from what it would be. He did this thing that I feel like Joss Whedon did with Firefly, where like they were like, the future is going to be like really different. I know, let's sprinkle in a bunch of Chinese. But he did the same thing with Indonesian, where he was like, yeah, Indonesian, there's lots of people there. Like that's the language that's going to take off. And like, maybe so, but he didn't really incorporate like any other like aspect of Indonesian culture. It was just this like really like kind of light, lazy thing where it's like, it's going to be different, but there's some Indonesian now. So I don't know. I think that's like a lazy thing, you know, where it could have been incorporated better and in a more interesting, holistic way. I've been studying a little bit of Indonesian, so like I was pleased to like pick up when they used it. I was like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. Like there's the one point where they offer one of the girls like a food and she kind of makes a face like, what's this weird gross future food? But it's just fried bananas. So I don't know. That was a fun part for me, but I wish it had been more integrated better.
Well, thanks, Kara. You know, something you bring up, you said dude vibes a few times, like giving up dude vibes. And that reminds me of the latest Axe body spray, which Will is currently wearing. So Will, could you give us some dude vibes, please? Sorry, buddy. I'm just messing with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't have an experience as a 12-year-old girl, but let me tell you what I think about them anyway.
Thanks. Give us the dude vibes with your Axe.
No, I do read quite a bit of comics, and I am a huge Brian K. Vaughan fan. Saga, Why the Last Man, Pride of Baghdad. I love all of those. I feel like I'm a little divergent here. I like this. I didn't love it. I kind of wanted it to build to something more. As far as Brian K. Vaughan's writing on women, though, like Alana, who's the mother in Saga, she's like one of my favorite characters in fiction, and like really complicated portrayal of being a woman and the mom at the same time and how those two conflict. So I guess he was good at writing that female character. One of the things that kind of frustrated me about this book is I feel like they're building up this very complicated time war, you know, between the old timers and the hip punk group that I don't know has a name. And then we get to like the end of the third act and they're like, oh, never mind, we're breaking time. It's fine. We just have to put everything back. So I feel like the larger payoff of that whole thing didn't really go anywhere. So that disappointed me a bit. I think, I can't remember who brought it up. Genji Ito was mentioned earlier, the manga writer and artist. I love the dream sequences in this comic. I love how weird and disturbing they get. And like, I would have done like 50% more of that. Like I like that tone shift a lot more than the rest of the book, which to me was, I don't know, kind of felt like a pretty used time travel story.
Nope. Well. Will, hopefully you can rejoin. You still with us? Did you finish your point, Will, or were you? I'm sorry, I feel like
Will is muted. So
okay.
There we go.
I'm asking him to unmute. Will, are you back on? You want to finish what you were saying?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry,
that's okay.
I moved to phone audio a while ago because the video is kind of lagging in and out, but
okay.
I think I finished my point.
Well, thank you, Will. You know, like I said, I wish that we just had scratch and sniff, and then we would know what dude vibe smells like. But I assume it's what would you describe it as? It's a bit of like Cool Ranch Doritos, but with kind of like a sweaty Xbox controller. Am I right? I mean, I'm not saying that's what you smell like. I'm saying that's what the Axe body spray called Dude Vibes smells like, which
probably some Mountain Dew Code Red too.
There you go. Mountain Dew Code Red. Awesome. Awesome. Well, you know what? There's no one happier that we're back on Zoom than our Rebecca Moss, because it's better for sketching. Sketch us up a comment. Rebecca Moss, talk to us.
First of all, it's good to see all of your faces, even in tiny boxes. And I love the snow, so it's a good, I don't mind the snow day. I was a very happy 7th grader. I had some best friends, and we would totally have done this if aliens had stomped around in our backyards while we were hanging out. I really believe that. I don't think I was ever as fearless as when I was a 12-year-old girl. My main thing I wanted to talk about was the drawing style. And I was continually struck, as I am not really. I've read a fair amount of comics, and most are beautiful. I mean, there is no doubt about it. But this one was cinematic in a way that just really, I kept being struck by how using 2 or 3 colors, there could be animation and dark shadows and bright lights, and the way he used the girl's hair to indicate action and movement and attitude, and I guess the cohesiveness of the drawings helped me relate as I went from different worlds. One world we haven't talked about much is the ancient world, and meeting, I've forgotten her name, but and that baby ends up being the Time Lord or the bad guy, or whatever, the old guy. I think I might have got that wrong. Anyway, I like the integration of the different stories and across the timelines. And you're right that the Time War didn't come to a fruition, but once you found out who everybody was, it was very inside baseball kind of a story. Lots of people who knew each other. My final point is I was very proud of the older versions of themselves. I mean, they started off cynical and, you know, us pretty much. And they got to get some juice and see something important and help out and not take it over. I really liked all those aspects of it. And I will say, I still can't tell between the girls very much. I'm really bad with the names and all. I did think the love story was a little ham-fisted, but boys writing girls, what are you going to do? Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. I really like it's coming from you. That means a lot. You, as an artist yourself, really appreciating the cinematic qualities of this art and noting how much can be done with the colors. I do. You know, it's funny because you look at this, and the TV series that they made is only 1 season as of now. Amazon decided not to continue with it. They might be able to get it somewhere else and keep it going, but it wasn't nearly as good, I thought, as what we have here. I was interested in it though, and I would continue to watch it because I do like these characters in this situation, and I think they do have potential there. But what you have here with this art is, I mean, this is like the storyboards for the movie that it could have been, or the show that it could have been. You know, and of course, every creator and then every artist wants to do their own take on something. But I feel like when it's been so well laid out for you like this, there's no shame in it. And we've seen this in other movie and TV adaptations of famous comics where they've taken exact panels. They've taken such indelible art and images, and then like, this is for like the super fans, but here's the shot, you know what I mean? Here's like, this is the cover of this comic, you know, with Spider-Man like lifting this heavy thing, like that's a really famous, you know, thing, that sort of thing. And Cliff Chiang's art is just wonderful. So I'm glad that you appreciated it. Angela, you are the tech wizard. Talk to us.
Hi. I really enjoyed this. I like pretty much every time we've done a graphic novel. It's really the only time I read them. I did start off at first, and I was talking to Katie about it, and like, have you started? She's like, no. I'm like, first of all, it's really easy. You can breeze through them, but I was also really confused by the dream sequence and all of that. And there was like the first couple books, I was like, wait a minute, where are we going with this? But I think that's like the buildup of the characters. I thought it was interesting the way like some of their verbiage and terminology and stuff like that, just the way they chatted. I'm like, that's so 80s, the way you're talking about that. But then I was also like, in the 80s, there was so little technology that I was like, how did they figure all these things out? Oh, I'm just going to hop into this thing and it's going to take me to another world. So suspension of disbelief, that's perfectly fine. You have to do it in a lot of things. So I was just like, that seems a little sketch. I saw some of the comments that was like, oh, well, you know, they did a good job of not giving too much away, but I was like, there's like imagery that that I agree. I thought the art was really great, but you're like, that person is related to this person. I also agree, like them meeting their newer selves or their older selves was really cool, and how they related there. So I thought it was funny when they pulled up like the Apple device. They're like, this Apple thing that looks like an Apple or iPod Shuffle was taking them from place to place. But overall, I thought it was quick, easy, and I enjoyed it. I busted through them super fast. So I think it was like 45 minutes per issue, and that was with me being distracted. So it was nice to just kind of be able to rapid go through and the tie off at the end.
Thanks, Angela. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that if you don't suspend belief or you don't do things that are sketch, you're just not an adventurous character. You know, there's things that you're not going to get into scrapes. You're not going to have fun stuff happen to you unless you do a few things that are kind of sketch and sus, you know, if you will. But yeah. There definitely was, I mean, the excitement over the walkie-talkies as far as technology goes, you know, the ability to communicate that way with each other is, you know, is funny, but it's another, you know, callback for people of a certain age to think of the times when we did get on our bikes and left. And I mean, my parents didn't know where I was until I came home because I was hungry or because it was really hot out. I mean, air conditioning. I mean, otherwise, you know,
my mom had a really loud whistle. That's how we knew it was time to come home from dinner. Like she'd stand on the front porch, not even lying, and whistle, and we could hear it like blocks away. That's how we knew it was time to come home for dinner.
So great. Yeah, my mom's dad had that, my grandpa Paul, and he would just whistle and the porch light come on and then the whistle, and then it's like, oh boy, you know, you're being babysit by the grandparents. You better come fast. So but yeah. I see Andrew's got his hand again. Andrew, talk to us.
Jeff, you mentioned something that reminded me of one of the things that I liked about the comics as opposed to the TV series, which came out, and I ditched almost immediately. I don't even know that I got to the second episode, but I'm a pretty quick. You know, I discard TV shows pretty quickly because it's a lot of time to invest in something. So if I don't like it to start out, it's usually pretty common for me to get rid of them.
I hear you, and I agree that we don't have time to waste time on bad shows. But most people will tell you, you got to get through the pilot. You got to get through the first episode because there's so much they have to set up. And usually the second episode is where a show starts to, you know, kind of tell you if you're going to like it or not.
This whole thing actually gave me my rationale as to why that was clear. And actually, I saw the show before I read the comics. I didn't even recognize necessarily that they were related. So it was a couple of months that I had seen the TV show, the first episode or whatever, before I started reading the comics. And it took me a while to figure out that I had seen something like this before. And it gets actually to the question of, can guys write girls and all that sort of thing. And, you know, I have a lot of trouble with that kind of take on what can people do, because we're all really just one thing. So anytime you expand yourself geographically, gender-wise, whatever, you know, you're writing about something you don't really know personally all that much. But what I thought this comic did was it wrote children really well. Like I bought the kids and their concerns and their, so like Mac and the relationship she had and the trope around that. You know, I bought the character of Mac being this kind of tough persona who was in reality really naive. You know, this worldly 12-year-old that smokes cigarettes, but in reality, she doesn't know much about the world, which is really, really common among children. Like, you know, there's a lot of kids, whether they're male, female, whatever their race is, whatever their religion or background is, they have very strong opinions about things, but they also have no, you know, real basis for whatever they're believing and understanding. And so I liked the way that these kids came off. And I actually enjoyed that aspect of like Stranger Things too. Like the difference between Paper Girls, the TV show, and the Stranger Things, the TV show, was that I bought into these kids. You know, I could tolerate, you know, I mean, I believed that this was a reasonable kind of persona to be presenting. And I thought, so that was something that came up just in this conversation that made me realize that's probably one of the reasons, you know, I liked Stranger Things, didn't like Paper Girls, the TV show, but felt like the comics did a much better job of describing that, regardless of whether or not the relationships in the 80s or any of the, you know, any of that stuff was, you know, true to life or really accurate, which would make sense that someone that, you know, wasn't in that situation wouldn't get exactly right. I did feel like, you know, people could, you know, most people, I think, having been kids, could relate to the insecurities and the, you know, and the situations that these kids found themselves in. And while, you know, it's time travel, not exactly a really truly believable thing, the kids themselves brought it into something that you could relate to and, you know, enjoy as you know, a little adventure on that. So that's where I think the comics did a nice job. The author did a nice job. Was just, you know, I didn't feel like I was wasting my time on these kids. I felt like I was learning something about, you know, what it's like to be a kid in a strange situation, in a strange time in your own life. And the other thing is that I think I forget if Cara mentioned it or someone mentioned it, like, how long did this actually happen? That is such a great question. Like,
anyone have a thought on that? Because no, that's a great point, because I also noticed that on the reread and reading the trades versus monthly, you just assume this because of all the time jumping around, like, oh, they've been together all this time. It's the actual time they've been together is what is it, a week? At less than a week, right? It's a few days.
As an adult in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, I have relationships and storylines in my own life that have gone on years and had, you know, less going on in them than, you know, a similar situation, which I could apply to myself, you know, on some really important night in Halloween or whatever, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old in my own life. Like, you know, it was more nuanced, it was more important to me than these long stream of things that I do as an adult. I thought that was really that aspect of it, that you get into, oh my gosh, there's this huge epic going on, but yet it's like 48 hours. That's like, you know, that's like a teenage life. That really happens to people. You know, you have these huge epic things that happen to you when you're young that, you know, just don't cross the border into when you're an adult necessarily. They're just not equivalent. So anyway,
maybe not. I bet there's an adult here. I bet there's an adult here who's had a couple of wild 48 hours that they want to share with us before we're done tonight. And I'm looking for your hand, and I want to hear a story, and I want to hear about the time that you barely slept, you didn't have time to poop, and that you were just you were crossing time streams, whatever you were doing. Feel free to raise your hand and talk about it. Speaking of no time to poop and crossing time streams, Pete O'Grady has his hand back up. Pete, talk to us.
All right, I'm back. This LOLs there, funny people. um, yeah, yeah, I think I was glad to hear that, especially, from Kara, that like I, I'd like to, that, because I really like these characters, and then how people become fast friends is always interesting, because like in college, that was my experience. We became like people my freshman year. Um, uh, sorry, my video vanished. I'll figure that out later. But that like you become best friends, and like really quick, and that's what I kind of felt like with these girls. They're 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 just four kids that going through something together, and they're the only ones that that they know in this other land, the other time. So they're really that accelerates the bond with each other. I thought that was pretty cool, uh, and it's hard to keep up with chat and all this stuff. But I'm just
Focus up, Pete. Focus
just-
up. You come back to the chat when you're not talking.
yeah, I'm
One
just
thing at a time, Pete.
yeah, and then
This is your time. This is your
Right.
time, Pete. Except when I interrupt you, it's your time.
yeah, then yeah, and it's teasing Andrew is a full-time job anyway too. It's like the
Yeah, I know. I need to get an intern to do that, because I would like to spend more of my time doing that. I'd like to tease many more of you, but I feel like I have to do so much stuff where I can't tease you guys, and I actually have to be nice and serious. It's hard. It's really, feel my pain. Feel my pain.
yeah, and then yeah, but I think this is exciting to me though. Is like this is kind of like but Paper Girls is sort of a gateway to me. I think the last graphic novel I read before this was it Persephone or Persepolis? What was the
Persepolis. Sure.
Persepolis? Yeah, the Iranian girl.
Yeah,
And
it's a great one. Classic.
yeah, and no, and I just love that one so much. But it's been that long, like since the early aughts, and um, and this one too sticks with me because it's like I think it's the graphics, and this is probably depends on an individual, but it just ignites my mind, and like
That's awesome.
and I just remember like so many of the scenes, and even ones like you go page after page when there's so much action, but it sticks with me. I just remember it, and I'm on team binge, just because I was me and putting it off. Like 2 weeks ago, I read like 20% of the book, and like, all right, this goes pretty fast, so I got time. And then on Saturday, I was like, well, I better make it fast now, and so I read it over the weekend. But boy, was it did it pick up. It was and then it was the other thing too, is like, even if you don't care about the story, there's just so much action. I mean, it's not like Rockford Files. Like if you ever watch an old 70s show, it puts you in a coma, like watching it for 15 minutes. It's
Oh
like,
my gosh. Pete, I
like
love you. This is a great stream. I mean, I haven't had time to poop while you were talking either. This was great. Thank you, Pete. But let me tell you, I'm interested. You opened up something for me when you said this was the gateway for you, and it opened it up. I was kind of surprised, because I thought that maybe you had read Saga or some other ones that we've done over the last few years with Books and Bars. But if you haven't, feel free, please, anyone, what should someone read if they liked this? If this really opened their eyes to the graphic form and to these kind of stories, feel free to make other suggestions. And what should we continue to read? I see in the chat some people are lobbying for a return of Saga, that maybe in 2023 we revisit our friends in Saga, which would be awesome. But I want to keep doing. I was worried, even without the snow, that there weren't going to be that many people interested in talking about this, because traditionally the one graphic I do a year or every 18 months or so is not as well attended as some of the other ones. But I'd say you guys have proved me wrong, in the sense that it seems to be one that was worth reading and discussing. And I really appreciate all of you taking the time to do that tonight. But so please recommend away, whether it's verbally or you want to put it in the chat. what else should we read in this format? That would be great. Okay, there was a couple things that were touched on. Oh, remember that discussion we had about Columbo? I had never seen an episode. Guess who got Peacock 99 cents a month? Guess who's watching the first episode of Columbo, directed by one Steven Spielberg, who set the tone for the whole Columbo series by directing Columbo. And if you haven't seen The Fabelmans, which I gave free passes out to a week or so ago, you got to see it. Anyway, so
Columbo totally.
Columbo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it holds up.
I'm
Columbo,
gonna watch the Steven
Columbo's
Spielberg
totally
directed
watchable.
episode of Columbo probably as soon as I get off of this chat. I can't wait because Peacock is only 99 cents a month if you got it for the deal. But the Burgermeister's got her hand back up. Let's talk to her.
Well, I was just gonna say the other thing I really did like, the Max storyline I liked that didn't involve her being a closeted homophobic gay person. I liked the that we actually had some like consequences of time travel. Like she got that like time travel cancer. There's no cure, like, and she has to kind of like face up to it. And of course she, you know, gets her memory wiped, so she doesn't know, but she kind of like does go through the process of like accepting that. And I did like that storyline a lot. For people who are maybe want to dip their toe in more into comics, I read like a couple others like around the same time as I was rereading Paper Girls that are also about death. One of them was called Shadow Life, which is like about an old woman who is like fighting the personification of death like away from her, and it was really good. And then another is about the personification of death, and it's called The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, and it's about her getting like turned into a human and like confronting her role as death by like encountering humans that are facing death. And I can put those both in the chat, but those are both really short ones, like compared to Paper Girls, really short. Like they're just these like single, like The Many Deaths of Layla Starr is just one book. And Shadow Life is not published as a comic the way like Paper Girls and a lot of like superhero comics are. It's like just a graphic novel like Persepolis is. So both of those are pretty short. They're both really good. For more like memoir graphic novels, I really get into those. I'm not a memoir person, but when it's a graphic novel, I really like it. But Spinning by Tilly Walden is really good. There's another one called The Best We Could Do, and the author's name is escaping me, but it's about a parent's journey from like Vietnam and then like this person growing up. There's one called The Magic Fish, which is another like kind of first generation immigrant one. And so I really like graphic novels. I like how fast they are. Like I can just like read it in like a day, like an afternoon. So it makes me feel very accomplished. I'm like, yeah, I just finished this whole book. So I think they're really cool. And when you get away from like Marvel, DC, and Image, there are some really cool and inventive ways of storytelling.
I agree. And I just posted a link. So a new thing I've been using also is Scribd. And Scribd is interesting because it has graphic novels digitally and also audiobooks and a bunch of other stuff on there. You can sign up for free. If you sign up for free using my link, I get another free month. It's all nice. But I put a list to Deaths of Layla Starr are on Scribd. So Scribd is cool because if you're not sure about taking the plunge on some of these comics, graphic novels, you can use Scribd to read a few of them, check them out, see if you're into it or not. I'm a huge fan of Ed Brubaker. He has a series called Reckless right now. I've been talking about his series Criminal is incredible. It's real like gritty, like noirish kind of stuff. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's like a grizzled guy. This is the concept of Reckless. I love this. It's a detective who owns an old movie theater, and he hangs out there with his like young detective assistant, and they screen old movies, and then he gets a case and he goes out and deals with people, and he sometimes has to rough them up a little bit. It's like a classic. It's set in the 80s and 90s, and it jumps through time a couple times, not with time travel or anything, but just it spans a bunch of different stories. And they put out like one entire story every few months, and it's collected in like a hardcover. And then so you can just read each one. They're kind of standalone. If you're talking about Columbo, you just want like a good standalone story. But if you read all of them, you get like references to other ones and stuff, but you don't have to read them all, which is great. So if you just like picking up a little mystery, little noir story, that one's really fun. Yeah, believe it or not, X-Men is so good again right now. Like, it's gone through so many ups and downs over time, but X-Men is such a solid title, and there's a bunch of really good X titles. So if you ever were interested in mutants and X-Men and everything that meant, it's a great time to start reading that before they come into the MCU if you want to get a taste of it. I mean, I just grew up reading X-Men and loving them so much. So I'm really happy to see that there's like great writers and artists doing that stuff right now for Marvel. There's a thing called Marvel Unlimited. You can get this app and you can pay monthly or you can pay yearly, and you can read. It's kind of like Netflix for comic books, of Marvel comic books. They come out like a few months after the single issue is on the shelf, and then you can just read it in the app. And I love reading comics on a tablet, because you can go panel by panel, and you can have like zoom in, and you can really like just look at like one thing, and you can kind of read it that way. Or you can have like the whole splash page open up. You can kind of pick out different ways that you can go through the app. It's really kind of cool to check that out. But people got their hands up, so I got to go back to Rebecca. Rebecca, talk to us.
You asked a question at least in half an hour ago about what
No
was
one cares about my questions.
I know about what was the transformative experience. And it was actually back when I was in 7th grade. We went to it wasn't a summer camp. It was like a fall break camp. And it was Brown County, Indiana. Very woodsy, very like 13 girls and 7 boys in our grade, and a whole bunch of other 7th graders, 6th or 7th graders in a camp, and we had to do stuff. Anyway, we had one night where we stayed up all night, and it was there was reading of the Bible involved. There were hysterics. There were girls choosing of the 6 mangly boys that we had boyfriends, and the rest of the girls were whatever. Realization that 2 of our friends were gay. You know, that was the first time that kind of came, made the possibility. So lots of drama. Our teacher was disgusted with us because she got no sleep. And, but we would have been up, like I said earlier, up for anything. It really was a time for that. And you were talking earlier about the language, whether or not it sounded 80s. It was a blend. There was definitely, we have changed our language quite a bit since the 80s. There's no way we could talk completely like that and have it resonate with people from today. But they got some things really right, and you know, they had to adjust as it went. But anyway, I just wanted to share my memory of feeling like a superhero.
That's awesome, Rebecca. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, there's nothing like a good Bible camp kind of thing to make you feel like a superhero with the reading of the passages and stuff. Maura's got her hand up for a while. Maura, are you with us?
I just had some comic recommendations.
Please.
And I will say that comics is like the one area of life that I allow to be problematic. So my absolute favorite is The In Call by Jodorowsky.
Oh yeah.
The art is by Moebius, and he's like one of my favorite graphic like artists. And it came because Jodorowsky was going to make Dune as a movie.
Yep.
And then nobody had ever seen Dune that was on his team, and it just kind of fell through. And then David Lynch made his, and we all know how that turned out. And so H.R. Geiger was involved with this, and then like went to make Aliens with a lot of the art that he used for the Dune, but they took like the story of Dune. They hadn't read it. This was what they thought the story of Dune was, and turned it into the in Call. And I think the art in that one is just absolutely amazing. Jodorowsky himself is very problematic, but I just have to like give myself that pass. Bitch Planet by Kelly Sue
Oh yeah.
is amazing. I know we didn't read The Sandman, but we should have read The Sandman series, or at least the death spin-offs that were done, the death specific spin-offs. And then Powers by or Brian Michael Bendis. I think it's one of his lesser known
yeah.
ones. But it's kind of like Heroes Before Heroes was a thing. And I really enjoy the lady characters in that one.
Yes, actually, oh man, have you seen the series of Powers? Is really good.
Yeah.
Um,
really
I
good.
love that. Yeah, and the voice talent on there, and it's drawn just like the comic. That's a great series. Yeah, some great recommendations, and
Oh, I have one
yeah,
more.
go for it.
The Martha Washingtons by Frank Miller. Really wonderful. It's Martha Washington Goes to War. I can't remember the other one, but I mean, that's also my problematic nature with comics is Frank Miller. But yeah, I love his Martha Washingtons.
Yeah, Frank Miller's got some problems that that definitely came out later in life, and it's harder to go back and like his stuff. But he was definitely influential for what he did. Andrew, I'm still looking at you. I'd like to make fun of you,
So
Andrew.
a couple of things came up that just reminded me of some things that I really enjoyed. One was the doctor scene where Mac, finds out that it's not a curable thing; it's related to that. I really thought that was clever. I went into that scene where they break up and they go running around and they're like, they're going to go try to find a cure for Mac, and I was like, I'm wasting my time on this because I've already seen this kind of thing before. But it turned out to be a pretty good plot twist in that, no, it's stuck with you, and it turned out to be a way that they were identified to people. I thought that was good and clever. The other thing that I'll mention is that KJ actually crushes the skull of one of the guys in the ancient times. And I don't know that it necessarily dealt with it really perfectly there, but I thought the perfect ending was when she's like, I don't want to forget all this. They're like, you're going to want to forget some of this. It's like, it's not good for you to remember that you just smashed this guy's skull in. You're going to appreciate, in the future, not having had this experience in your life. I thought that was also clever way to do it. So often, the violence and the trauma that these people are experiencing is passed off in the kind of superhero bang, 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 type of thing. But I thought that was kind of a nod to, hey, these are real kids, or these are kids, and what they're experiencing is not for kids. And that happens to kids a lot. They experience things that are not for kids an awful lot, and they don't get to forget, and they don't get to get out of it. I thought this was a good way of, telling a true story, kind of this epic and coming of age comic story, but at the same time grounding the audience to, hey, this is, if this was to really happen, this would not have a happy ending.
That's a great point, Andrew. In fact, that's something that struck me on the reread also, because I do think we're so used to, well, I can't speak for anyone else. I'm numb to, some sort of an action violent story where, you have to dispose of the bad guys. But I like how they took a beat and they said, you know what, actually you forgetting about this is the only way, otherwise it's going to haunt you forever. Because, you murdered somebody. I mean, it wasn't self-defense or whatever, but you're going to have to deal with that, and you're 12 and you shouldn't have to, I thought that was great. That was really cool that they took the time in the 48 hours of not sleeping or pooping and running around to at least acknowledge the fact that, you're going to be dealing with some serious trauma. And so the mind wipe is the best option here. But I love the hopeful glimmer. It's like that classic, there's other stories where they've done this, but where, will they meet again, or even though they, they go their separate ways, that sort of a thing. There's some hangout, and I mean, I think it ends hopefully, and who knows, how long their friendship will last. I mean, I think there's a lot that's shown in this is what I want to come back to also is, what are the authors trying to say here? A few of the people brought up in the chat, and that, maybe there's something about, as an adult, we forget certain things, or, we talked about how this is like not that crazy for a couple few 12-year-olds to experience this much of a life in a few days. But like once we slow down in later years, we don't have that much that we can pinpoint in a couple of really exciting days. So think in terms of what were these creators trying to say with this particular story? Why are they 12-year-olds? And the fact that, they meet older versions of themselves. And I mean, that's kind of a classic time travel trope though, right? I mean, there's the different rules of it. We've read a few different stories too, like, can you interact with someone? Can you not? Changing the timeline, all those things. This was a very different sort of timeline that was very rigid, where it's like, they talk about it being like a tape where you can erase parts of it, but the more you erase those parts of a tape, which is a great like 80s reference, the quality degrades. And it's kind of like where the tabs have been punched out and you can't erase over that tape on some of those things they talk about. Donna's got her hand back up, even though it's not her birthday. It's coming up soon. When we talk about, Donna, did you say the 15th of December is her birthday?
No, actually it's the 18th, but.
That is, I think I knew that. That's my wife's birthday. That's also, do you know whose birthday that is also? Steven Spielberg's birthday.
All right.
And my wife. So now I know that, that you share it with those two people. That's kind of incredible. You should definitely have your pick of any book next December.
Well, Sarah has her hand up and she might have an answer to that really great question you just asked about the important themes of this book and some of those really cool ideas that came forth. But my question was going to be about, in hearing all these recommendations about other graphic novels, I remember a few meetings ago, Jeff, when you were trying to decide what to schedule us to read, it was between Paper Girls and then there was something else. And has that other book or books, has that been commented on just now in this recent conversation, or do you want to say anything about that?
The Sandman was one of them, and I was really surprised that the Sandman was beat out, because it had a bunch of votes going into it until it became just focusing on graphic novels. Then Sandman lost out. And I just wrote The Fade Out. The Fade Out is one that was up there. That's a noirish tale by Ed Brubaker. It's set in the 40s in Hollywood, and it's a contained 12-issue story. Just great art, great noir story about Hollywood and a dark side of Hollywood. So that was one. I love stuff by the guys who made The Fade Out. So even if we don't do Fade Out, I could see us doing something else by that creative team. They're churning out a lot, and they do stuff for Image now. So Sandman, The Fade Out, Paper Girls, I think those were the final three we came down to, but I am more than happy to help compile a list of other suggested, and I can make like a thing on Bookshop or on Scribd or something. I'm finding a lot of these on Scribd, and I know Scribd is kind of like a Netflix thing also, but for books and audiobooks. So I want to check it out. But yeah, Fade Out, I think you might dig if you like that timeline and that sort of noirish tale. All right, Sarah. Now Donna really teed it up for you. Donna thinks that you are gonna bring it home with a great thing about my question and the themes and what your takeaway is. So either you are or you aren't. Let's find out.
I'm gonna try really hard, just for Donna, not for Jeff, for Donna.
That's right.
I'm gonna do my best. And I wrote things down. I got so excited, I wrote it down.
Awesome.
So I think what makes Paper Girls really fascinating is that it is a time travel story set in the past. And so the girls of Paper Girls live in a past for all of us here, all of the readers who get to enjoy their story, and it's designed that way. So it was really fun to get to see them meet their 2015, 2020 versions of people like me who spend a lot of time on their iPhone on Twitter and like walk around and they're like, oh, there's another apocalypse. Okay, who cares, right? So it was really fascinating to get to see that, because I think when it comes to time travel stories, we don't get to experience that a lot, where the time travel is great into the future, great into the past. People make jokes about Back to the Future all the time, right? Like, where's our flying cars and our shoes that tie themselves? And it's like, Back to the Future 2 took place like 7 years ago. So I don't know where those things are. But the point is, I think that's an interesting narrative choice that allows us to perceive both the girls in the past and the girls of the present as people that we understand, which is something we don't really get to do often with time travel stories. And I think that's fascinating. When it comes to forgetting like the trauma that these girls go through. So this might be surprising. I was a 13-year-old girl once, and I don't remember everything about it, but I think if I'd gone through this, knowing now, I probably would have not wanted to remember it, because it seems pretty terrifying. And it would have been something that affected me deeply if it had happened. And so I think the choice, as Jeff said, I think is kind of a gracious choice to allow them to be teenagers, to live their life, to enjoy the freedom and innocence of those times. But as an audience member, you see these beautiful relationships develop between these characters that gets wiped away because these experiences get lost, which is the tragedy part of it. Like, a little part of you is like, oh, I don't want them to forget, because I don't want them to lose these relationships that are so powerful and so meaningful throughout the entire story. And I don't know if anybody here plays video games, but it made me think of BioShock Infinite. And at the end of the game, Elizabeth talks about constants and variables, and how across timelines, spoilers, across timelines, there's constants and variables. And so seeing at the end, there's this little glimmer of like, maybe they'll, instead, in this timeline, in this future, they'll be friends. They'll be friends for longer than we think they will, is something that reminds me of that message that, like, no matter what happens, there's constants in our life that stay there. So I found that very moving, and it's something that I really appreciated. And it's very subtle, just like the decision, instead of not inviting to be a part of things. You know, I found that very moving, especially knowing as a 13-year-old girl, all it took was one person being like, hey, do you want to come hang out with us while we like hang out in my mom's garage while she's gone? I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. You know, that's like, sometimes it's all it takes to create beautiful friendships when you're that young. So I found that very moving, even though the story is so grandiose and extreme and wide reaching, it comes back down to this like core of like, regardless of what happens, we can still be friends. So I really liked that about the graphic novels.
Thanks, Sarah. It's I like something you said in there about you know, what it takes to become friends at that age. And I'm thinking about like now, like what it takes to become friends and how different that is. And you know, I mean, maybe it's a book club, maybe it's reading the same thing that someone else is and coming and talking about it. But whatever it is, I mean, you know, I consider you guys friends. So thanks for coming. I appreciate it. What else do we want to say? Is there anything that we haven't touched on with Paper Girls before I talk about next month? I don't want anyone to not have a chance. There's something that you want to talk about. Was there something from the chat that we want to bring to everyone else? I know everyone wants a list of all of the comics and graphic novels we discussed. I will try my best to compile that from the chat, from the video, and I will send that out. I was taking notes, and I can just get it from the chat, and I'll rewatch the video even.
Jeff, I just want to say hi, Sue.
That's great. Anyone else? Yeah, more shout outs. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is next month's book, 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And I saw that this is also on Scribd. I don't work for Scribd. All I get is, if you sign up, I get a free month of Scribd. I also, you know, if you guys buy the books through a bookshop, through the link there, Books and Bars gets a percentage of that too. So that's another way to support. I do agree that the library is fantastic. Special thanks to the friends at the St. Paul Library for their support. But the Libby app is awesome. I get so many audiobooks, and I listen to so many books through the Libby app. I absolutely love it. I know a lot of you are saying, you know, it's tough when the book is coming up in a month or so and you're way down on the list of getting it from the library. So there's a couple options there. I would check Scribd. I would see, you know, if it's the one you want to plunk down for, if there's someone you can share with, I don't know if there's something, where you guys can take turns, like someone buys one and then you trade it. But I've found success, and I find that, I put these things out a few months in advance. And if you look at the things I'm thinking about doing, there's not a lot of secrets. I don't completely change. I mean, I really did think we were going to do Sandman, not to say that we won't do it at some point. It just didn't come up, but I'm really glad we did Paper Girls right now. That said, tomorrow is February's book. That's the most further ahead officially picked, but I think after tonight I will be able to come out with like March and April and say a few more. And I put them in the bookshop. I have the list of official upcoming books, and then I have the ones that we're thinking about. And I always add to that list based on your guys' suggestions of the ones that we're thinking about doing for 2023 and beyond. And then there's a few other lists in there. There's gift ideas and stuff. They just had a big deal with like free shipping because of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but there might be some other sales and stuff coming up too through Bookshop. Anyone else have any other questions, comments? I'll put this link in here again. So we're going to do this in person, Seven Husbands, on Thursday, the 15th of December, a rare Thursday at Urban Growler in the Barrel Room. But then the Wednesday night before, Wednesday, December 14th, we'll do the Zoom for this one. So let me send you guys that link again. But of course, if you're able, I would love to see you in person. Love to see you guys at Urban Growler. But I also love the idea of people from anywhere can join the Zoom. So share it with your friends that live in different cities and have them join a virtual book club with you too. I mean, I'm going to try to get my niece from Australia to join from now on. So it could be fun. Who knows? Maybe she will. Anyone else have any other questions, comments before we go? Any other shout outs? You want to say hi to somebody that you saw?
One more.
Hollywood?
Hey, Ashley, it's been too long.
Yeah, Ashley. It is.
Yeah.
It's good.
First off, nice to see everyone. If you don't know who I am, that's fine because I just haven't been here. And Jeff, you'll be excited. Bob's here too.
Hey, let me
Just
see
saying
Bob.
Yeah. He's just like,
Hi, I'm trying to finish. I'm
Yeah.
behind.
I the only thing I want to add is that sorry, I was like decorating for Christmas while we were doing this, but like the idea that these 12-year-olds are going through something so large, like that parallels so well to what it is to be a kid. I'm a school librarian, and right now I'm working in an elementary school, but especially as a teenager, as a middle schooler, like everything is big. It is the first time you're experiencing everything. Everything feels huge. You've got those hormones that are going on that. So to have this like epic story of time travel to me is a really great parallel to what it feels like to be a kid. So when I was reading that, I kept connecting with that. And like when you do have those like fast connections with people, I don't know, that was something that happened for me a lot, to the point where I would start to distrust it. I was like, wait, are we actually connecting, or are we just trying to glom on to like a sense of connection? But
Ashley, can I ask you, have you recommended this to any people closer to the age of 12 and have heard what they thought of it?
I've recommended it to people in high schools, but I haven't heard back from them. But I'll let you know the next time.
Well, it's fun. I had a friend who used to live here and lives farther away now. And she joined Zoom a few times, and she heard we were doing this, and her son is 12, and I was like, they're 12 in the book. I'm like, I would love to hear what a 12-year-old thinks of this. I'm sure there's some things in there that whatever, but he's 12. Let's see what he thinks. Let him read it. We'll see. I might get in trouble. I don't know. Am I going to get in trouble?
Maybe.
That mom's too cool. That mom's too cool. I think she'll be glad.
Jeff, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for calling the Audible tonight. This was really nice. Everyone remember to tip Jeff. It's not easy to corral this herd of cats.
Thanks, Andrew. I hate it. I do come from this show must go on mentality, and I just couldn't believe it though that it just looked like it really wasn't gonna be a great idea to try to make people get there and stuff. And then I saw the Urban Growler, like I said, they closed by 6 o'clock today, so I could tell they were like, "Can we get out of here?" And luckily, yes, I do have some advisors that I was talking to on Slack about it, and and they were, they let me know that they would follow if I put it up. And hopefully, I did hear from one person who found out too late, but I put it out on all the channels. So we have a newsletter that goes out through MailChimp. You could sign up for that on our website. Our website is booksandbars.com. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. I don't know how long we'll have Twitter. I don't know if anyone's still on Twitter. I don't know what's the point, but I still put the Books and Bars stuff on there in case that's the only way that someone hears about us. Instagram, and yeah, so I put it out on all of those, and sent a few personal notes to people that I saw had already signed up for the Zoom or stuff on, but it's so hard to tell on Facebook, and I don't really know how many people and who's coming to the in-person events. So I just did my best to get it out there. But honestly, the 20 some that we had tonight was probably more than would have shown up at Urban Growler tonight. So thank you all for taking the time and being here. And if you can come in person next month, that'd be great. If not, I'll see you on Zoom again, right? So I will post an edited version of this video on YouTube and share that. And I will get a list from the chat and from the video of all of the graphic novels we talked about. Feel free to send me any others that you want to. You can email me at booksandbars@gmail.com. Thanks a lot, everybody. Hope to talk to you soon. And see you in December. Good night.
Thanks, Jeff.